Hey guys, welcome to this bronzing video where I show you all the techniques I use to give my skin color and give my skin shape. When I asked you guys what you wanted to see, a lot of you guys said you had troubles with bronzers coming off throughout the day. So I'm going to show you what I do, but don't feel like you need to buy everything that I show you. As always, I just say just use it as like a guideline, or just use whatever you have at home. Enjoy this video and hopefully you guys learned something, and yeah. So I've got my base on, I've got my concealer on, I've got some of my eyeshadow on. It's obviously not done yet, but next thing I'm going to do is, obviously today's video is all about bronzer. I layer my products. I don't ever use just one bronzer. I feel like it gives much more dimension and much more depth. My recommendation is to have a powder and to have a cream. So first step I'm going to do is, now that I've got my foundation and my concealer on, I'm going to go in with a cream bronzer or a liquid bronzer. It's really up to you. Normally I use Liquid Laguna from NARS, which gives a really nice silky finish, and this one from Huda Beauty is a matte cream. So I'm using the Tantour Light from Huda Beauty today, and I just take a little bit. Usually that's not enough for me, but I'll just start off bit by bit first so then I don't waste anything. I take this Real Techniques brush. You guys have seen me use this 1,000 times, and usually I will deposit the color on my forehead first. Do not do this if your forehead is small. You're just going to shorten your forehead. As you can see already, it's giving me a lot of warmth, a little bit of depth as well, but I just take it around the forehead. I start to taper it in here. I start to taper it in where the temples are because my forehead's bloody huge. But next, from the ear to about like between the nose and the mouth, I like to start shaping my bronzer. So I'll place that color there, and as you see the whole time, I'm just tapping the color in. And I'm not going on the high points of the cheekbone, which is here, but I'm not really going too low either, because that's really just creating a really sharp and gaunt look. And I'm just gonna keep tapping this in. And then I might take a little bit more. And as you can see, I'm not going straight down, but I'm just going somewhere in between. Kind of stop where the middle of the eye is. Sometimes I like to pull my bronzer in a little bit further. That's just a personal preference. I don't think it looks good on everybody, but my face is very round, so I just like to pull it a little bit further in than just the end of the eye. Okay, whatever's left on the brush, I lift the eye up as well. My powdered and penciled wing liner is just sort of directing where that line is, and that'll just create the illusion of my face getting lifted up, and I just sort of lightly blend into that. And I'm helping extend that wing out a little bit. Like that. The techniques that I'm showing you is obviously suited to my face, but once you kind of have the basics and the techniques, you'll eventually figure out what looks good on you. And I think that's the great thing about practicing doing your own makeup, is that eventually you'll be the master of your own face. No one else can do your face better than you. I could have probably left it a bit further out, and I can always take the sponge that I use my foundation with and just pat out any excess if it's too much. As you can see, me pressing back a little bit of the bronzer just helps it out a little bit. Another thing I almost forgot while I was doing this cheek is that you just want to take whatever's left over on your brush, and you just want to sort of buff it into the jawline. Now this is the only time I really ever swirl my brush, to be honest with you, because with your jawline there's less product there, so it's less likely to sort of drag around. But I always just try to make sure my brush is 50 on the top, 50 on the bottom, because if you've just got all the bronzer or contour cream sitting underneath, you're not really going to do much other than shave what's already underneath. You're trying to just shave off a little bit off the top of the jawline. There you go. That jaw's done, that jaw's not. But this side's naturally a little bit bigger. My face is very uneven. So now that I've done that cream bronzer and I've created that foundation for a very warm glow, I'm gonna go in and set my under eyes, because now I'm moving into the powder phase and I no longer have any cream. So I'm just gonna start setting my under eye first, and then I'm gonna come back to the bronzer. Okay, so now that I've set my under eye, I'm ready to go in and set that cream bronzer. And the powder that I'm gonna use has a little bit of a tint. It's technically a translucent powder for medium to deeper skin tones, but I like using it to set the perimeter of my bronzing area. So the brush is a little bit dirty, but I'm using the...
Well, just as I thought, trash.
Zoeva 127. I really love this one because it gets into the natural contours of the face. I just personally prefer using angled brushes. It's really jacked up because I've had this one for a while, but the original ones have a silver handle. This was just like a Christmas one or something. But I take the loose powder, and the powder I'm using is the Laura Mercier medium deep translucent powder. All I did was sprinkle about like 2 little shakes into it, and that's it. make sure it's distributed pretty well, and then just tap off the excess. This is a step where you don't want to be using it in a way that you would with your bronzer. You just don't want to be packing your brush full of pigment and color, even though this technically won't give you that much pigment, but if you're quite fair, it will add a bit of color to your skin. But I will just now tap it all over my forehead. I do not at any point like swirl my brush because I'm not trying to bronze my skin up or, you know, trying to remove anything underneath. I'm really trying to press and merge the powder and the creams together. I'm gonna take a little bit more because I underestimated how much I needed. As you can see, the shape that I've created here, I just wanna tap it in. Make sure you're holding it like that if you're gonna use an angled brush. But I'm just tapping everything that I placed down before. And then you just want to take a little bit on the jawline, just to start setting everything. And as you can see, the difference on this cheek compared to this cheek, it's a very slight difference, but this is exactly what you want to slowly build up the depth. You just really don't want to go in with like a really dark, muddy bronzer. It just is not a vibe. So just like that, I've set my cream contour, and I've also created more depth without using a bronzing powder. And you know what, to be honest with you, you could probably leave the house looking like this, but I don't like my bronzers to be matte. It's all about that nice skin glow. So I'm just going to finish it off with a couple more products, as I always do. Because I'm just showing you the bronzing steps, there's a couple of steps I do with my face as well in between my bronzing steps, and using the Hourglass Luminous Light is one of them. After I've set my contour, I go in with this powder and I dust it just in the center, down the nose, under the eye, just a little bit above the chin. You just want to give the skin a bit of life again. Yep, and done. So next up, I'm using one of my all-time favorite bronzers. It's the Radiant Light from Hourglass. This is just heaven. Like, I can't even describe how amazing this is. When you go in store, don't swatch it on your hand. A lot of the times I notice that people get really disappointed when they swatch it. It has this pearlescent finish, so when you swatch it, it looks like it's very glittery, but that is what makes it look like your skin. Your skin naturally isn't matte, and I think a lot of people find that really hard to understand because they relate glow to oil. But your skin, and healthy skin, is not powdery or matte. And even though, yes, I'm using a lot of powders, I still want to create that illusion of healthy skin through these beautiful pearlescent powders. And this Hourglass powder is hands down one of the best bronzers you'll ever find. I like using Radiant Light. Luminous Light is a little bit lighter. So taking the same brush I used to set my contour, I'm going to use it to do this bronzer. I'm just going to dip it in lightly. It's quite pigmented. So I'm just kind of going back into where I popped the cream bronzer. I'm not taking it too high and I'm not taking it too low, somewhere in between. And as you can see, it's just giving me that sun-kissed glow. I really love this bronzer. It's kind of like a hybrid between a blush and a bronzer. And so now if you want to swirl, you can swirl lightly. I've already now pressed that bronzer in, and I can go back in and just give it a nice light sweep just to build up that concentration of the color. So usually now that I've done those steps, I'm pretty happy with the definition and the shape that it's given me, that I don't feel like I need to go in with any other bronzer. But sometimes I find that my face is a little bit more bloated if I've had a lot of salt or whatever the night before I've just put on weight, I don't know. I will need a little bit more definition, and that's when I go in with something a little bit cooler, nothing too grey. But I like using the Too Faced Sweethearts bronzer, and as you can see, it's a little bit cooler as opposed to this Radiant Light bronzer. Cooler, much warmer. You know, obviously this might be a complete overkill, but for some people, I know you guys really like, you know, a really heavily contoured makeup look, and this might be it. Or maybe you just want to use this instead of everything else. It's really up to you, it doesn't really matter. But if anybody is watching and they don't know the difference, contouring is more shaping the hollows of the cheekbone. Bronzing is giving your skin a little bit of warmth, as if it had been hit by the sun and you've got a nice sun-kissed glow. Sometimes the two cross over. It does happen naturally with darker colors on the face. It creates a shadow. Anyway, I take this one from the top of my ear, between the nose and the mouth. So again, shaping just a little bit there. And then I take a little bit again just around here, and then around the forehead. I don't want to put too much. I've already got a lot of product on my face. And then I take a little bit under the jawline again. As you can see, this time around I'm swirling a lot more than tapping, because I know for a fact that with the amount of powders I've had on my face, it's probably already set and nothing's going to move around. As you can see, that's a little bit more defined as opposed to this side. So technically my whole bronzing process is done. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish showing you my cheek process. I'm just going to show you blush, and I'm also going to show you highlighter so you can at least just see how it looks like as a whole package. But let's hop into blush. So I'm going to go in with the blush called Spring Sheen from MAC. I'm not a huge blush girl, so I always like going lightly and then slowly building it up. I know a lot of people just pack it straight on and then blend it out after, but I don't really trust myself with that. My face is very round, so my technique for my face is that I don't pop blush on the top of my cheekbone. It just makes it even rounder. I like almost contouring it so that it just sort of defines the cheeks a little bit more. I'll place it in the spot that I popped the last contouring powder, and I just sort of blend it out. As you can see, it's just building up. And now the blush is all done. As you can see, I don't like a lot of blush. I just like a touch of color. I just prefer my skin to be more bronzy than blushy. That's just a personal preference. I'm gonna use the Ofra Feeling Myself palette. So first I'm just gonna do Pillow Talk. But I really love this brush from Flower Beauty. It kind of just shapes the cheekbone perfectly. And I take a little bit under the brow bone sometimes, and I just dust everything on top of my cheekbone like that. Sometimes I look straight ahead and see how far I can sort of risk pulling it in without making it look like I'm oily. So that is my routine for my cheeks, and I'm just going to do the rest of my makeup, and then I'll come back and show you the finished look and how everything looks together. So this is the finished look, and hopefully you guys learned something in this video today. As you can see in my techniques, it's really just all about layering and setting any creams and using creams to sort of intensify the colors on the face instead of just relying on powder, because you can only layer powder so much. Hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you next time. Next up, I'm using one of my all-time under the jaw. And I take just a little bit under the jaw.